The story begins on February 3rd, introducing Ethan Cross, an animal control officer counting down the final moments of his shift. It also happens to be his birthday, and he's eager to head home. But just as he's about to clock out, his supervisor calls with one last urgent job. Frustrated but unable to refuse, Ethan heads out. His assignment takes him to the basement of a Chinese restaurant, where a hostile dog has been causing trouble. Instead of forcing control, Ethan calmly speaks to the animal, using his voice to ease the tension. The tactic works, briefly. When he checks the dog's tag, he sees the name Max, and something about it unsettles him. Before he can react, the dog suddenly bites him and bolts. Injured but determined, Ethan grabs a tranquilizer gun and follows. The chase leads him to a cemetery, where Max disappears without a trace. While searching the area, Ethan's attention is drawn to a gravestone bearing the name Clara Bennett. Elsewhere, Ethan's wife, Naomi, waits birthday cake. As time passes and Ethan still hasn't arrived, she steps into a nearby bookstore. There, a strange novel titled The Number 23 catches her attention. Not long after, Ethan arrives and finds her reading it. Oddly enough, Max is nearby again, quietly observing from a distance. Ethan explains the strange encounter at work, and Naomi, intrigued by the book, decides to give it to him as a birthday gift. The author is listed as Simon Vale, a name neither of them recognizes. Later, they attend a small gathering with friends, but Ethan is distracted. The book has already captured his curiosity. Right from the beginning, a warning appears. Everything in the story is fictional, but if the reader begins to see connections to their own life, they should stop immediately. Back at home, their teenage son, Lucas, greets Ethan and gives him a present. Soon after, Ethan begins reading. The first chapter introduces a character named Adrian Vale. The following day, February 4th, Ethan is given time off to recover from the dog bite. With nothing else to do, he dives deeper into the book. Early on, it invites the reader to imagine themselves as the child in the story, pulling Ethan in even further. The narrative follows a boy growing up in an isolated town. He's intelligent and determined, convinced that education is his only way out. The boy often interacts with a neighbor's dog, belonging to Mrs. Wren, which frequently wanders over to his house. Although he always returns the dog, his father has a strict rule: never step onto the neighbor's property. One day, on his 8th birthday, curiosity gets the better of him. He follows the dog home and makes a horrifying discovery. Inside the house, Mrs. Wren lies dead, covered in blood. Authorities later label it as self-inflicted, but the boy doesn't believe that explanation. In his mind, someone else is responsible, and that moment shapes his future, pushing him toward becoming a detective. After finishing this part, Ethan tells Naomi that the similarities are unsettling. The boy's experiences feel strangely familiar, almost like pieces of his own past. He even pulls out an old photo album, showing a dog from his childhood that used to run away just like that. It was one of the reasons he chose his career. He also admits something deeper. Mrs. Wren reminds him of his own mother, who died when he was 8. Despite all this, Naomi doesn't see the connection. She encourages him to keep reading instead of jumping to conclusions. As Ethan continues, he learns that Adrian eventually grows up to become a detective and meets a woman named Celine. The next day, February 5th, Ethan returns to work, but his focus is gone. He spends most of his time reading and quickly reaches chapter 5. In this part of the book, Adrian encounters a blonde woman moments away from taking her own life. Using charm and calm conversation, he manages to talk her down. But her explanation is disturbing. Everything comes back to the number 23. She claims it follows her everywhere, in dates, numbers, names, and patterns she can't escape. Her father had been consumed by the same obsession before ending his life, and she believes the curse has passed on to her. Adrian, unsure what to make of it, tries to lighten the moment with a story. She laughs, and he leaves, thinking he's helped. But just seconds later, she collapses behind him and dies. When Ethan reads this, he's shaken. Soon after, he starts noticing strange patterns himself. Even his initial, E, pushes him to start making connections to the number 23. Driven by curiosity, he goes to a bookstore to learn more about the author. But there's nothing, no history, no other works. The book appears to have been self-published, adding to the mystery. Back home, Ethan begins sharing his discoveries with his family. He points out how different aspects of his life connect to the number 23, his birth date, the time he was born, even numbers in his personal documents. To him, it's no coincidence anymore. But Naomi isn't convinced. She points out something troubling. Later in the book, Adrian becomes a killer. Then she asks Ethan directly, does he see himself in that too? Ignoring the implication, Ethan keeps reading. In chapter 7, Adrian becomes fully consumed by the number. During a visit to a hotel with Celine, he notices the time, 9:14, which adds up to 23. She asks him to act out a violent fantasy as part of a role play. Though uncomfortable, he goes along with it. reassuring her that he would never hurt her for real. But from that moment on, his mind begins to spiral. He starts having vivid nightmares where he kills her. At the same time, Ethan begins experiencing disturbing visions of his own, seeing himself commit violent acts. One night, as he tries to distance himself from the book, he notices something unsettling. Naomi owns exactly 23 pairs of shoes. The next morning, February 6th, Naomi finds Ethan asleep on the couch. His arm is covered in scribbled calculations, all leading back to the number 23. Among them is a chilling message: kill her. Alarmed, she immediately calls their friend, Dr. Nolan. Later, Ethan meets Nolan at the university. Hoping for an explanation, he describes everything. Nolan suggests it could be psychological, an example of how the mind creates patterns when fixated on something. He lists examples. The Earth's axis tilts at roughly 23.5 degrees. Humans have 23 pairs of chromosomes, and even blood circulation takes about 23 seconds. To him, the number itself isn't special. People simply assign meaning to it. But Ethan can't ignore what he's experiencing. He admits Naomi thinks he's losing his grip on reality. Nolan advises him to finish the book. If the connection still feels real afterward, then the answers must come from the author. Ethan follows that advice. In the story, Adrian seeks help from his psychiatrist, Dr. Mercer, due to his violent nightmares. The doctor reassures him, suggesting rest and time away from work. But stepping back only makes things worse. Celine becomes distant, frustrated by his behavior, and eventually leaves. Obsessed, Adrian fixates on small details, like the fact that she owns 23 pairs of shoes. In a fit of anger, he throws one away. When she finds out, she calls him insane. Still, he continues spiraling, connecting historical events, even infamous crimes, to the number 23. Eventually, he shares everything with Dr. Mercer, who offers to speak with Celine directly. Adrian agrees, but it becomes a fatal mistake. The two begin an affair. Reading this, Ethan grows paranoid. He starts to suspect Dr. Nolan might betray him the same way. Unable to shake the thought, he rushes out to find Naomi. He tracks her down at her shop, but when he arrives, it's closed. Inside, however, he sees her talking to Nolan. That night, Ethan wakes up suddenly at 11:12, another number that feeds his obsession. Without thinking, he leaves the house and heads to a hotel, the King Edward. He requests room 23. There, he continues reading, now nearing the end of the book. In chapter 22, Dr. Mercer arrives at Celine's place, only to find her dead. Adrian is nearby, hiding. It's revealed that he killed her. But when the police arrive, they find Dr. Mercer at the scene holding the weapon. He's arrested immediately. As Adrian stands by the window, ready to jump, the story abruptly cuts off. The book ends. No final chapter. No explanation. Just as Ethan is left staring at the unfinished story, a familiar sound breaks the silence, a dog barking outside. It's Max. Without hesitation, Ethan rushes out and chases after him. Once again, the dog leads him straight back to the cemetery. This time, Ethan manages to sedate him using a tranquilizer. As he looks down at the animal, something clicks in his mind. He starts playing with the letters in Max's name, forcing another connection to the number 23. Before he can process it further, a priest arrives with a groundskeeper, who turns out to be Max's owner. Ethan explains what happened, and the priest casually mentions that the dog often lingers near graves, almost as if he's guarding them. Curious, Ethan looks at the tombstone nearby and freezes. The name reads Clara Bennett. According to the inscription, she died on her 23rd birthday. But then the priest adds something even more unsettling. The girl's body was never found. When Ethan returns home, he finds Dr. Nolan there again. This time, Nolan takes things more seriously. He suggests that the book might not be fiction at all, but a disguised confession. To support this, he brings up an old case from nearly 15 years ago. Clara Bennett's disappearance had shocked the community. Her boyfriend and college professor, Daniel Hart, was arrested and convicted of her murder. What makes it disturbing is how closely the details match what Ethan read in the book about Celine. To Ethan, the conclusion seems obvious. Daniel must have written the book under the alias Simon Vale. The next day, February 8th, Ethan visits Daniel in prison. He questions him directly about the book, the number 23, and whether it was all a hidden confession. But Daniel firmly denies everything. He insists he never killed Clara, claiming he was framed. He even mocks the idea of the book, saying if he ever wrote anything, he wouldn't choose such an obvious and ridiculous pen name. Ethan leaves the prison uncertain. For the first time, doubt creeps in. Back home, he tells his family he no longer believes Daniel is the killer. That's when Lucas reveals something unexpected. He secretly read parts of the book and discovered a hidden page containing a mailing address. Acting on instinct, the family comes up with a plan. They send 23 padded packages to that address. The next day, February 9th, they wait at a shipping center, watching carefully to see who comes to collect them. Eventually, an elderly man wearing a hat walks in and claims the parcels. Ethan is convinced this has to be the author. He approaches the man and confronts him about the book. But instead of answering, the man looks at Ethan in shock and says something chilling. he was supposed to be dead. Without warning, the man lunges at him before trying to escape. Ethan chases him down and demands answers about the number 23. The man simply whispers that Ethan already knows the truth, and then, right in front of him, he slits his own throat. Everything stops. Naomi rushes to help while urging Ethan to take Lucas and leave. As the man dies, he hands Naomi a piece of information, an address. She also finds identification on him. His name, Dr. Ellison. Later that evening, Naomi calls Ethan. The man didn't survive, and there's no record of who he really was. She's already gone to the address he gave her. It leads to an abandoned psychiatric hospital. Inside, she learns that Dr. Ellison used to work there. Despite how unsettling it feels, she continues exploring. Eventually, she finds his old office and steps inside. At the same time, Ethan makes a discovery of his own. By isolating every 23rd word on page 23 of the book, he uncovers a hidden message. Go to Casanova Park. Dig beneath the steps to heaven. Believing it's a clue, he takes Lucas and heads there immediately. Meanwhile, Naomi pushes deeper into the hospital. She eventually enters a strange red room. Every wall is covered with the number 23 written over and over again. On the floor, there's a box. It has Ethan's name on it. Suddenly, she hears movement behind her. Back at the park, Ethan and Lucas count exactly 23 steps before starting to dig. At first, it seems pointless. Then they hit something. A skull. Panicked, they rush to call the police. But when officers arrive, the skull is gone. With no evidence, the police assume it's some kind of prank and leave after questioning them. Soon after, Naomi arrives with Dr. Nolan and picks them up. But on the way home, something strange happens. They spot Max sitting in the middle of the road, completely still. Ethan snaps. He blames the dog for everything, every strange event, every coincidence, and drives straight toward him. At the last second, he swerves. He can't do it. But then, something else catches his attention. Naomi's hands. They're covered in dirt. And suddenly, everything shifts. Ethan realizes the truth. She must have been the one who removed the bones from the park. His mind races. He accuses her of being the killer and the one who wrote the book. He searches her bag. Inside, he finds a knife. That's enough to convince him. At that moment, Lucas steps in, demanding answers. And Ethan says it out loud. His mother is a murderer. Finally, Naomi breaks. She admits that she and Dr. Nolan did take the bones, but only to protect the family. Then she reveals something far more shocking. Ethan didn't find the author. He is the author. She shows him the original manuscript she discovered in the psychiatric hospital. It has his name on it, but Ethan refuses to accept it. To him, it's just another lie. Dr. Nolan tries to calm him down, but Ethan accuses them both of manipulating everything. That's when Naomi shows him something else, a saxophone. The same instrument Adrian played in the book. The sight of it triggers something deep in Ethan's mind. Memories begin to surface. Frantically, he searches through a box of old belongings. Piece by piece, his past starts coming back to him. Overwhelmed, he runs. His family follows. Eventually, Ethan returns to the King Edward Hotel, to room 23. This time, he's not just reading the story. He's about to remember it. Inside the room, he begins tearing down the wallpaper, and underneath it, he finds chapter 23. In it, Adrian finally reveals his true identity. He is Ethan. The truth unfolds. After his mother's death, Ethan's father couldn't cope and took his own life. He left nothing behind, except the number 23. That number followed Ethan everywhere, even into college, where he met Clara Bennett. They fell in love, or at least, Ethan believed they did. But everything shattered when he discovered she was involved with her professor, Daniel. When Ethan went to confront her, he found his belongings thrown outside, along with a cold, final breakup note. Obsessed, he analyzed the message, counting every 23rd word. The result: kill her. Consumed by paranoia, Ethan returned to warn Clara. He believed the number was coming for her next. But she didn't take him seriously. Instead, she mocked him, called him weak, just like his father. Something inside him snapped. In a blind rage, Ethan attacked her, stabbing her repeatedly until she died. Afterward, he hid her body in the park, unseen except by Max. Later, Daniel arrived and unknowingly touched the murder weapon, leaving his fingerprints behind. That mistake sealed his fate. He was arrested and convicted. Meanwhile, Ethan checked into the King Edward Hotel, room 23. There, he began writing the book, not as fiction, but as a confession. He covered the walls, the floor, everything, with chapter 23. And when he finished, he jumped. But he didn't die. He survived, with severe injuries and no memory of what he had done. Afterward, he was placed in a psychiatric institution. His writings were dismissed as delusion. They eventually ended up in the hands of Dr. Ellison. Ethan recovered, but his past remained buried. That's when he met Naomi and started a new life. Meanwhile, Dr. Ellison published the manuscript. But in doing so, he became obsessed with the number 23 himself, slowly losing his sanity. Back in the present, Ethan stands in the same room, finally facing the truth. Naomi joins him. He's devastated. He took a life, and an innocent man paid the price. But she reminds him of who he is now: a husband, a father. Still, the guilt is too much. Ethan walks out into the road. Max is there again. For a moment, he considers ending everything. But then he sees Lucas and stops. He refuses to repeat the same cycle, to leave his son with the same trauma he lived through. The family embraces, overwhelmed with emotion. And for the first time, Ethan lets go. The number 23 is just a number. Sometime later, Clara Bennett's remains are finally laid to rest. Daniel is freed. Max is there, and Ethan turns himself in. Now in prison, he waits for his fate, hoping that telling the truth will matter. But more than anything, he knows he finally did the right thing. In the final scene, Naomi and Lucas visit him. As they talk, Ethan glances at a clock nearby. It reads, and the story ends. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed this recap. Thank you.